Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi yesterday conducted a spot visit to the Randburg Magistrates Court. It's part of the Access to Justice Week program. It's a nationwide initiative and it's designed to popularize justice services and ensure that communities, especially those in rural and disadvantaged areas, aren't left behind when it comes to legal assistance. Let's welcome her to the program now. Minister Kubayi, thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. We talked about the visit that you conducted at the Randburg Magistrates Court here in Johannesburg yesterday. But in general, what two major observations have you made in this Access to Justice Week so far?
Good morning, Iman, and your listeners and your viewers. Definitely, it's a week where the department across the country, officials and all of us are going out, one, to indicate to the public about what services they can get, what help can they get, just not only appearing before court when they are in trouble, and the support they can get. Visiting Randburg Magistrate Court, a few weeks ago, there would have been a complaint about the case management that was not moving properly from legal practitioners. And we had to go and check. I can say safely that we are moving quite in terms of the timelines, dates. We do not have problems there. But what I found and the feedback I have received is the coordination that needs to be done within the justice system. For example, when police do an operation over the weekend, and then they have a huge number coming to the magistrate court on Monday, they find the judiciary and the court administrators not ready to receive such a huge number, both in terms of the cell capacity on the ground, where we are holding those who are supposed to be detained and also might be going back to prison or being sentenced, or all those things. So, for example, yesterday, just with the capacity that we have about 80 space capacity within our court. We had more than 180 people who were detainees in the court yesterday. This is a risk for our court officials in terms of our security. This is one of the areas that we've not had security breaches. We do not have challenges of infrastructure, which was quite welcoming for me, because this is one of the areas that we have a problem with. Then there's an issue, as I talk about the issue of interface. It's also the work that the police do, Home Affairs and ourselves. For example, they will arrest a lot of illegal immigrants, and therefore we need to have them, before they go to court, prosecutors that they say they must have the Section 212 forms signed by Home Affairs. Now, when it's over the weekend, you find that Home Affairs have not been able to complete those forms. So one of the conversations I will have with the Minister of Home Affairs is to find a mechanism for us to integrate and work together so that there is no backlog in terms of processing, for example, illegal immigrants. As you would have known that in Gauteng, this is one of the outcries, that we have a huge number of illegal immigrants that are committing crimes in our province, in our country, and therefore they are processing within the criminal system. Justice system is quite important.
Yeah. I just think about the BMA, Minister, and some of the new technologies and innovations that they've been employing to manage borders and to do proper oversight in terms of promoting border control and security. What is standing in the way of this coordination? Because as you've shared with us now, there's a very silo-wise there's a very silo-wise operational approach to the execution of justice in our country. And if we're only talking about it now, that means, no steps have really been taken to synthesize the work of all of the justice and law enforcement agencies to ensure that there's, a quick in and quick out when it comes to the country's courts. So what has been standing in the way?
No, actually, the feedback, Iman, is that previously they had Home Affairs officials that were actually dedicated specifically to support the courts. I think because of the issues in terms of financial constraints, they were withdrawn. Similarly with SAPS, the numbers that we had at the court, previously we had 34 personnel, currently we're sitting with 22. So it's those issues. And what I said to the Department of Justice team is that we've got to find mechanisms of being creative as well from our side. How do we make sure that we can be able to not only have physical presence in our court, for example, of police officers, because if a minister of police is going to think about what is it that I'm going to do to deploy, Minister of Home Affairs, will they prioritize deploying in a court or deploying at a border? So you'd understand those things. That's why we are saying, let's think outside the box within the constrained fiscal environment. And that's what we will be doing, to interact with those, just to find mechanisms of closing the gaps while there are financial constraints.
Minister, one of the other issues is just how long it takes and how much time cases spend in the system. I think by August 2024, there were more than 220 judgments that were outstanding. Of course, these affected mostly the Johannesburg Labour Court and the Mahikeng High Court, with the highest number of what we are now terming late judgments. But we're seeing cases being stalled. And in fact, if you know, in the reading, I think some cases are projected to only reach the court roll by 2030, which is years away from now. So we are sitting with a bit of a gridlock in the system. And I'm thinking, you know, when you talk about making sure that there's access to justice for everyone in South Africa, the case of Eric Lolo in Wellington, down in the Western Cape, an eviction case, which happened in 2023, still in 2025, that matter hasn't reached a resolution. So people are being, are literally, in some cases, going into the justice system for their cases to die or go nowhere.
Okay. Iman, there are two things we must separate. We must separate the work of the high courts and the work of the lower courts. So with the magistrates, for example, in Randburg, if you are to get a date, the date you will get will be this year in November. I've checked that, and many of the courts in Gauteng, I got that report, and we checked with other courts, because I do get questions from members of parliament about that. Where we've had a backlog has been in the higher courts in terms of the dates that are longer. And that's why you have seen the then Judge President, who's now the Deputy Chief Justice in Gauteng, would have put mechanism to try and resolve the issues of the backlogs. That's the first thing. But from our side, what we have done, one, at court level, we've encouraged case management. What happens is that we have all the role players sitting around the table. For example, at the magistrate court yesterday, it was confirmed as well that the chief magistrate sits with everybody, the prosecutors, legal aid, the Department of Justice, to look at all the role players and NPA, to look at all the role players and where areas are the problem. For example, we had a non-meeting of our targets in dealing with child justice. And when I checked, they've been able to address it, because the previous quarter we have not done well. And part of the problem was that we did not have a psychologist on site to be able to help Gauteng with the reports that are needed for children. Now, those are some of the things that we put in place as mechanisms to respond to the challenges that we have. Number two, in terms of the court judgments, unfortunately, I'm not able to answer that, because that's the preview and the work of the Chief Justice. So she will be the person that is able to explain the release reports, all the courts annually, to indicate how long it took for them to be able to process the cases and to be able to to be able to issue the judgments. So in the process, where maybe just to help the viewers, is that currently with the superior courts, what we call high courts, the Chief Justice and the Judge Presidents or heads of courts are responsible, including administratively. The Minister is just the executive authority in terms of just making sure that the Department of Office of Justice, of Chief Justice, functions effectively. But with the lower courts, we still currently, the Minister is responsible. So the Judiciary does the judgments and does the work, but administratively, end to end, the Minister is responsible. Yeah. And that's why you'd find us more focusing on the lower courts, Iman.
I appreciate that clarity, and I think it's certainly a conversation we should initiate then with the various judges, or the judge presidents, and the CJ herself. You mentioned children in there, and I know from your visit yesterday at the Randburg court, I think two of the observations you made was that there wasn't a teddy bear clinic, and there weren't enough in-camera facilities, given the high rate of cases that do involve children or child witness in cases. How concerned are you by what you saw there, but also what you're seeing countrywide in the magistrates' courts?
Yes, indeed. The prosecutor who was dealing with the cases of children there, especially sexual offenses, did give feedback to say in the Soweto court, he's got support from the Teddy Bear Clinic. And with that, he's able to get most of his cases moving faster because the comprehensive reports are coming out quickly. Similarly, it's the observation when I've been to many other courts where we have Tutuzela Center. And then you'd find that the reports are coming out quite quickly and faster. So that was the recommendation that we need to look at in terms of Randburg. Similarly, in terms of our SOS, at least we have one currently. The second one will be installed in September this year. That has been a relief to the prosecutors and those that are working with children, especially the magistrates who are interviewing children, in terms of making sure that they can be able to testify. Another issue we emphasized again, Iman, is to encourage the judiciary to schedule the cases that relates to children during school holidays, so that these children don't miss out of school because they have to be in court for the whole week. So it's one of the things that we continue to encourage. Other magistrates are implementing that, others are not. So we're trying to make sure that there's uniformity and ensuring that while children, we are seeking justice for these kids, but we're making sure that they don't miss out of school.
You know, the burden of accountability or the burden for delivering justice obviously rests a lot on prosecutors' shoulders to create and execute, a watertight case. Looking ahead, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoyi, earlier this year expressed concern, Minister, about, quote, rogue elements inside the NPA, allegedly colluding with criminals to sabotage cases. These are remarks at the time that you said were, quote, unfortunate but still deeply worrying. You also said you would possibly consider launching an investigation into prosecutors involved in such practices. Where is all of that now?
Thank you. I think the issue here, we got overtaken by events because eventually then we found ourselves with General Mkhwanazi making almost similar comments that led to the Justice Madlanga or Madlanga Commission as we know it now. So we are believing that all of us, because the president has made that proclamation, has also made those terms of reference, and we are included as the Department of Justice or the portfolio of justice in that. And we believe that we shouldn't do duplication of work. We should be able to allow. But again, internally, what we have encouraged, for example, issuing of ensuring that where there are wrongdoings, definitely disciplinary processes must be encouraged, and we have been dismissing quite a number of prosecutors who we have found not to be doing their work. Similarly as well, in terms of prosecutors that we think or we believe that have broken the law, they have been brought and charges have been brought before them. Several of them, I think there's one case that is running currently of a prosecutor in court, but also not only around us, Iman, talking about rogue elements. We do have good men and women in the NPA whose life continue to be threatened. You'd remember recently we were laying to rest a prosecutor in Gqeberha who's been killed. And part of the issue is to say when they are threatened, then they make them vulnerable to be able to do their work. So it's a balance act to support the prosecutors to do their work effectively, without fear, without favor, without intimidation, but also where there are rogue elements, then they are dealt with. So we're looking forward to the Madlanga Commission so that they can help us unearth some of the challenges that are raised by as Advocate Batoyi has done.
I know I'm being naughty, but I want to squeeze this in. The headline story in the Business Day today is the magistrates are taking President Cyril Ramaphosa to court. I don't know if you've seen it. Do you have a comment on that? It's overpay.
Look, the issue of remuneration, obviously, it's not within my purview, it's the president. But we have been in conversation. We met with the heads of courts with the CJ about the matters. Part of the issue is that there have been agreement that the matters around the pay or salaries of both the judiciary is something that needs to be looked at, both in terms of how over time they've raised the concern that their salaries have been eroded by no increase. And this have been said that is against the Constitution. So they've requested that there is a review holistic review in terms of the salaries of the judiciary, and this we have agreed to. It's unfortunate if they've decided to go to court. I say that they did indicate that they will take the matter to court as the magistrates, but we are hoping that we could find each other outside court to be able to find lasting solution in responding to not just salaries, but the conditions of work and support for the judiciary, because we've committed that.
Minister, thank you for your time this morning. Do appreciate it. Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. Coming up,